Hello, friends. Welcome back to Film Chewing and the Oscars Project. Today we will be discussing the 1978 Best Picture film, The Deer Hunter. The runners-up that year were Coming Home, Heaven Can Wait, Midnight Express, and An Unmarried Man. The Deer Hunter is based in 1968, where lifelong friends from a working-class Pennsylvania steel town prepare to ship out overseas. Following Stephen's elaborate wedding and one final group hunting trip, in Vietnam, their dreams of military honor are quickly shattered by the inhumanities of war. Even though those who survive are haunted by the experience, as is Nick's hometown sweetheart, Linda. So I think this is a movie that I had heard about for a long time. Of course, the Russian roulette scene it's a cultural kind of, I think everyone's seen it or it's been referenced. So I expected to really like it, and I can't say that I really did, but I feel like we're all. I did some searching, and this film is heralded for being this groundbreaking, brilliant film. So I think maybe we start with the good. Let's start with the positives. What did you? Both of you. By the way, Chris and Jared are both here again.
Hello.
I'm a terrible host.
Go ahead, Jared. You go first.
Positives. Oh, okay. Positives. This one. No, this one was rough on me because, Chris, like you said, I remember watching this long time ago, and I thought I liked it, but maybe it was more because you were supposed to like it. Everybody's supposed to like, it's supposed to be like Steve said, this groundbreaking film, and I didn't remember it being this long. Well, when I watched it when I was younger. Yeah. But I think the performances were good. I think the acting was very good, and it was very in some cases, especially in the cases of Mike De Niro, I thought it was very he was very understated compared to some of his other roles. In his other roles, it's very animated and very quirky characters and stuff like that. Whereas this role, it was very he's stoic. Very downplayed, very stoic, and that, of course, that fit in contrast to the other characters around him, and so so like I said, I thought the acting was very good. The positives, huh? The positives were those few moments of silence in the film. I thought those were the most reflective parts, and I think the film is trying to make a social statement. About the horrors of war and the effect it can have on people, and it's contrasting it with how people generally live their lives in a non-warfare area. Like the United States was generally a safe place to live, and Vietnam at that time was not. And they were contrasting how people lived their lives, and especially in the beginning of the film, it really showed that they had no clue how good they have their lives. They were always fighting and arguing with each other, but that was in relation to what was going on in Vietnam seems so so unimportant. It's important to the people as they're doing it, but it's unimportant in the bigger scheme of things. And I think they kind of push that theme through, especially with Mike's reaction to everything when he got back from the war. Kind of reinforced that. And so, I think there was some solid acting, some solid theme work as far as the story goes. But other than that, I had a hard time watching this film.
Mm-hmm.
And not because like the subject matter. I mean, I've seen that before,
Yeah.
in other movies. And that's, that can be some tough subject matter. Killing yourself accidentally and stuff like that, the violence and what have you, the torture they went through in Vietnam. And, so it's not that. It's just, it was hard because it was so slow and so boring. Like, and so noisy. Like, we'll get to complaints about sound later. I have some major issues with the sound in this film.
Okay. So for me, I think this film's really good on paper. When you look what it's about, what it's setting out to do, you have this group of men that is they're almost sort of looking forward to war or the event of war at the time before they go. They have lives, they have interrelationships between them. They have their own drama beforehand, and then they go to war, realities of war hit, and they come back very changed people, and then they try and reintegrate into society. And the things that in theory are very good about it are the people that didn't go to war and the people that did go to war, how they had a bond beforehand that is gone, essentially, by the time that they get back. They can't relate to one another at all. Their life experiences changed them. Especially when you consider that they are from, like, an immigrant kind of town and culture and relationship. Like, they're kind of held together by the fact that they have a common bond. But the Vietnam sort of rules that. And again, I can see why it won Best Picture, because I can imagine in 1978, very much in the zeitgeist, America was still feeling the aftereffects of the Vietnam War and about the reality. I think it's different for the likes of me from the outside, not from America to start off with, but that has seen Vietnam portrayed so many times in film and television, and the books and the stories, etc., that have come round, that there's an understanding now of what happened. But I can imagine in the 78 it probably wasn't quite as forefront and obvious to everybody. A bit like you said, Jared, in terms of like America seen as a safe place to live, it probably hadn't permeated every corner of America about the horrors of the people that had to endure from being there and coming back. So I can definitely see how it caught the public in terms of like being an award-winning film for that reason. There's no doubt about that. But everything was very long and drawn out in one ways. And actually, thinking back to my memory, you think about the Russian roulette scene, but there are multiple Russian roulette scenes. It's almost like an overused trope by the end of the film. And I had this thing that there was one Russian roulette scene, and the one that I see in my head is actually the last one in the film, the one between Nick and Mike at the end, which is. But I often think. Sorry, not that I often think. I think now, looking back at it, it's almost like a sadness tinged through that whole thing, and I think the movie's at its strongest when Christopher Walken's on screen. As good as understated as De Niro is, he sort of does hold it together. But I think the real high points of the movie are when Walken's there, and especially that scene in the hospital after they've been rescued and he's been questioned about who he is, and you sort of think he's joking along at the start, and then you see the breakdown of him like that. That does set up, I think, the rest of the movie off that. But again, rather than wrapping up in about half an hour, we've got another hour and a half to go at that stage, and I think it tries to do too much at that stage in terms of reintegrating them back into society and then the search for Stephen and Nick at the end. So, like I say, great performances. I mean, in fact, it's an unbelievable cast, and I'm sure it was in the time, but definitely in retrospect, it's definitely one of those microcosms of like what they captured. And even John Cazale, his last ever performance, he never even got to see it on the screen. I mean, I could make a joke and say, well, he was the luckiest out of us all there in some cases, but but that may be a bit flippant in some ways. Yes, not as good a movie as I remember, but definitely has ideas of something that's very impactful and powerful.
I think so. I think it's important that we explore the realities of war, not only from the people who experience it, who come back, who are suffering from PTSD, who suffer the rest of their lives, whether it's physical or mental injuries. So I think it's really important to highlight those things because it's often not talked about, and it's becoming more common now for people to discuss those things when they come back. But I also think it's important to highlight the impact on their communities, the people they leave behind, because they go on living, and these people come back and they're damaged and they don't know how to help them. Yeah. So it affects whole communities, whole cities. It has an impact on everyone who's involved. And I think at the time, what I read is that it was very controversial at the time. And we can discuss later whether or not the ending is sarcastic. I think that's the topic I'd want to discuss with both of you. But yeah, I think that's, for me, I thought that was the highlight of this movie, the impact it has, because it does really highlight that. But before we get into the rest of our thoughts, I just want to mention the Russian roulette scene is a device used by the film, but it was not common in Vietnam.
Right.
So it was not something that they did. At least it wasn't common. So, but I think watching the film, you may come away from it thinking, oh, they did this all the time, and there was these clubs where they would just take turns. But no, it was a device made up by the filmmakers for the story. So just want to mention that.
To know.
Yeah. How many other Vietnam-based movies were made before this one?
I will look that up.
I'm kind of curious, because that that can lead into the like you said, the zeitgeist of what was going on at the time. And I'm just kind of curious because I know there's a bunch in the '80s that came out.
Yeah.
After the fact.
Very famous. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just kind of curious if there were any like major films that dealt with Vietnam more immediately after Vietnam ended or whatever. But
it looks like there was a North Vietnamese film named The Girl from Hanoi, and a U.S. film a year before The Deer Hunter was Go Tell the Spartans.
Okay.
And also The Boys in Company C in 1978, a Hong Kong U.S. co-production that premiered the same year as The Deer Hunter and provided a look at the war from a different perspective. So.
Okay. So there was some movement to definitely take a look at this subject and dissect it and try to make sense of it and what have you.
But not starring the key stars of 1970s US cinema, quite importantly. So it wouldn't have reached the kind of the audience that this obviously did.
Yeah. So that adds to the importance of the film itself, and it's definitely set the tone for future films to be made and other aspects of the Vietnam experience to be explored later on.
Yeah, but also, we go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
No. Please. I was going to open another tangent, so please.
Oh, well, I was too. I was just going to quickly mention. I know we talk a lot about lockdown and COVID and that whole time period and how we're all kind of still. I don't think we really realize like what it did to everyone. But thinking back to a time like Vietnam, where they were in the United States, where there was on the nightly news every night, if you were a young man who was you have to register for the draft. They were drafting birthdays, and you were watching TV however often they did a draft, and you could be sitting on your couch today and in Vietnam in a few weeks. So, looking back on that, it must have been just a very difficult time to live in if you were in certain age groups.
I'm just going to say, like, it's interesting to me that there wasn't that many Vietnam movies made before him, but this one isn't really about the war. In fact, the sequences in Vietnam are such a short portion of the movie in general that it's very much more about the exploration of the effect of the war, both before and afterwards. People before they went and actually what happened afterwards. And I think some of the issues is that it tries to resolve the issues in Vietnam in some ways in the film, rather than just concentrating on Linda and Angela and everybody back home, you know, and sort of doing that, trying to go back and looking for Nick thing. I think on rewatch definitely makes all that other stuff lose its power and lose its impact, because it becomes less about that, becomes more about the tragedy of the person that didn't come home, etc. So yeah, I obviously there's another, isn't it 81? I think Platoon wins, and obviously we get a very different type of movie at that stage, and you know, an examination of nearly a glorification back of war, the more classic kind of war films that we've been seeing even up to this point, if you include Patton and that kind of stuff. You see the return of Hollywood cinema to that kind of view and view of war, whereas this one's very much definitely taking a stance on it, and not for entertainment purposes, more for educational purposes, I think.
Yeah, looking ahead, looks like Born on the 4th of July, 1989, which is I remember it being really, I haven't seen it recently, but I remember it being really good. Lost out to Driving Miss Daisy. So we'll get to that in a few couple months, but yeah, I think A Thin Red Line, Born on 4th of July, two really good, films. And it kind of makes you wonder, is it better to have some distance and some time so you can reflect on that time period before you make a film about something like that? I don't know. I mean, not that there's a right or wrong, just is it?
Yeah. Well, I think there's something to be said about being in the moment and having your film reflect what people are feeling right now. Yeah. And also, there's also something good about 20, 30 years gone by as well, and having more of a reflective type of look at events. Yeah. So.
Okay, so is it time? So why the fuck did it take 40 minutes to get through a wedding? It's like I attended the damn wedding. I did not need that.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought. I was like, wow, I feel like I just went to a wedding I didn't want to go to.
Yeah. That's pretty much every wedding in my entire life, Jared. I don't mind telling you.
Pretty much, yeah. It was loud, it was monotonous, and it felt like real life. And I was just like, I don't want to be here. Where can I get out? How can I get out of here?
It's expounded upon by the fact that I think, and again, this might have been not true when I watched it the first time, I really disliked all the characters immediately. Like, they're not people that you would want to spend time around, or certainly not people that I would want to spend time around now. So actually, their antics at the wedding and the things they're doing repulsed me. Even when they went into the bar, the poor guy sitting by himself at the bar and basically trying to talk to him and torture him when they're incredibly drunk and he just wants to be left alone, just sort of made that feeling even greater at that stage. Even in the sort of quiet moments of the wedding, I was just like, oh God, no.
Yeah. You start with the open, this like really sad opening credit music, like it's like incredibly sad music that starts off with, so it sets that tone that you're going to be in for something that's very melancholic and maybe thought-provoking and what have you, and then you had this foggy, smoky, dark opening, and then all of a sudden it gets noisy right away, and it's dangerous. That the work that they do, the smelting and what have you, that's dangerous work. It's not pleasant, and it's very loud, it's very noisy. Every scene was chaotic, and it just keeps going on like that with the chaos and noise. And the one thing that really bugged me, it was the dialogue that the characters were saying. It wasn't that separated from all the background noise. It was kind of blended in. And if I wasn't watching the subtitles, I would have lost a lot of dialogue because that I have a problem with that kind of separation of noise, and so that's why I watch subtitles all the time because that happens a lot in some films, but especially this one. This one, I did not like the sound engineering at all in this whole film. I didn't like how noisy it was. I didn't like how the background noise made everything blend together, auditory wise, and it really, really bugged me a lot.
It might have changed the sound mix over time because, as you quite rightly point out, I tend to watch everything with subtitles on now as well because the sound mixes in modern films are an absolute disaster. I mean, there's just no separation of dialogue from either music in the background or otherwise. So I'm not sure if this was a remix of that because I can't imagine not watching this without subtitles. I started to watch it without subtitles because the way it was set up in mine, you had to go back to the main menu to do it and then put it on there. You couldn't do it from within the film, and I really struggled, especially in that scene that you're talking about, Jared. Like, it's almost just, in fact, it's just sort of reminiscent of most weddings that I've ever been at in terms of, like, it's just, everything's just turned up to 11, and then you go home and you go to bed and you go, oh God, I've had a night.
You get a headache.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say about the theme music, especially the start, is it just me, or it was trying really hard to be the Godfather music, like in some ways, and communicate that exact same tone and feel to it, almost like it was communicating this sort of provincial music, but also this is a serious film. This is you're going to come away impacted by this, and here's the music that we think sets the tone for that. So while it was not the same, and it has that recurring kind of thing that comes the whole way through the film, but it might have just been how I felt manipulated by some of the film and by the characters, and it's sort of, by about half an hour, 40 minutes, I was like, oh, get me out of Pennsylvania. Like, I've never been to Pennsylvania, but get me out of this Pennsylvania and away from these people, even when they're at the bar playing pool and
and when they're there, they're always yelling at each other. Always.
Yeah.
Nobody's just talking normal. They're always yelling. Wasn't that the guy who played Fredo?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. Yes,
yeah.
Here.
Oh, he drove me nuts.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand that guy. He's always yelling at people. I'm just like, oh, stop.
Well, the guy was nearly dead. He was Dan at the time. Like,
Oh yeah.
Attack everybody else.
Well, well, nothing against the actor.
Yeah,
he probably did what he was told, but the character.
Yes.
But all of the characters, they were always yelling at each other, and always like in their faces, like all the time, like just and like you said, it was hard to like any of them at all, and they had some of the horrible traditions of weddings that always bugged me, anyways. Were on display, and there was a lot of hitting of women. In that first half of the first hour of the film, and there was, there was a whole bunch there not to like, including the fact that none of them had any kind of realization about the weight of Vietnam, and which is done on purpose, of course. But when you're watching it and you're like, oh, these chumps! I want to feel bad for some of these guys, but I can't yet because you just don't like any of them.
Yeah. Very true.
I think they tried really hard to, like you said, Jared, to have the contrast between their home life and how people in Vietnam are living and the war and everyone involved in that. I think they hammered it home over and over and over again how kind of free they were and how they were really carefree and they were in their own little world and they did really stupid shit and they were acting like idiots the whole time and falling over drunk and having just not really. They did their job. They went home. They got drunk, or they went to the bar and got drunk. They were dicks. So I think we get it. You don't need 40 minutes of a wedding to show us that these people have because especially when the veteran walks in and they go and, oh, did you kill anybody? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
we get it. You don't need 40 minutes in a 3.5 hour movie. You don't need. First of all, it should have been like 2 hours long. But anyway,
Yeah.
you didn't need that long to give us that perspective of this is who these people are, this is their attitude, this is the way they see life. Get it?
Yeah. The interesting thing was there was a lot of promises made before the war, before they went off to the war, and we actually saw that all of those promises were worth nothing once the reality of war hit. None of those promises mattered after the fact when they got back, and I found that an interesting statement.
Yeah. There's also just like the general depictions of gender, I think, are very hard to watch by today's standards as well. You talked about the fact there was a lot of physical violence towards women, but I just think the othering of women as being an impediment to masculinity throughout the first book, even when Steve gets collected from the bar, and then the kind of the fun that's sort of made of that, and even then what masculinity sort of looked like and what was, very, very broadly speaking, the hunting and the freedom, etc., but that they were sort of lords and masters over their domain, and that nothing could touch them. They were sort of doing whatever they wanted in the way that it did. Obviously, they take that apart a little bit by the time they go to Vietnam. Like that's literally the point of all of that. The bravado and the dominance that they assert over their place is kind of gone by the time they hit Vietnam, regardless of whether they're carrying guns or whatever else. They're just changed in that part. So like, I do feel like there is some good stuff in here. It just was so sporadic in amongst these very long set pieces that in modern styles of movies would have just been absolutely stripped back and edited back. To a point that you would have got a 2-hour movie out of this, almost certainly.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, because by the end of Act 1, there was a nice touch when the guy started playing piano in the bar, and all of a sudden everybody just shut up and listened, and I was like, "Oh, that's so nice." And you could tell that was the end of the act. Basically, that was the end of the celebrating, the end of the wedding, the end of life as they know it at that point. And then also, then boom, you get the bombs. You get the Vietnam. You get they go into Act 2 and basically, ruin that peaceful moment with war.
That was pretty jarring, and I think that was on purpose. Yeah. I would imagine it's on purpose to go from this wedding, the hunting trip, and then we're in the middle of a war battlefield. But I wish we would have had some kind of transition from they go, they sign, they report, they get shipped off. How did they all get separated so quickly, and they just randomly run into each other in a battlefield? And that whole thing was very. Should have been something in between, some kind of transition.
I think that was by design, so that you kind of are discombobulated in the same way that they were. I think the whole thing is tend to do that, but it did lead to this feeling of being lost as a viewer, especially because of how slow things were before that, how kind of drawn out everything, where we spent an awful lot of time kind of being an observer in them, and then we're sort of, especially when you consider the film after about 5 minutes of Vietnam gets really dark as well. Like, it's incredibly dark. It's very hard to make out who is who at that stage, especially when they're captured at that stage. And one thing I did appreciate was the fact that they didn't try and just paint it as being a one-sided war in terms of like the cruelty was just coming from the Viet Cong or anything at that stage. Like, the first act that we really see in the war is when they open up the women and children hiding in the bunker and they throw the grenade in. Like, that's horrific. Like, it was very tough to watch. And then we see kind of both sides of it, but you go from this kind of not really knowing what's going on, who's who, I would also say that there's a lot of characters at the start for that first 45 minutes to an hour as well to try and keep a track of their names and all the rest of them. So when they get to Vietnam and they start to really just referring to each other by name because some people aren't there at the time and all the rest of it, I was kind of like, which one's he? Is that the guy? Is that Christopher Walken? Is that John Savage? Is that who really is it? So again, that kind of discombobulated kind of feeling that I had throughout the first part just sort of came back to like, I'm not sure who's who and who's missing. I sort of had to group them into little passes and even who was going to war and who wasn't going to war. I was sort of like, right, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they telegraph a lot of stuff too. Like, you knew Steve was doomed for some hard times ahead when he was getting married, and
yeah,
and you knew Mike was going to be the most well-adjusted one whenever it was over with. You could see that right off the bat, and and Nick was the wild card, and anything could happen with him, and as soon as we finally got to Act 2, where Mike happens to see Nick at the Russian roulette table, coincidentally. You knew that Russian roulette stuff was gonna be key towards the ending. It was a lot of stuff telegraphed, like really telegraphed.
They overused the Russian roulette thing was
constant.
If we just have that first scene, do we really need the rest?
Yeah, I agree.
And the it went on so long when they were the prisoners with the Viet Cong doing it with all the other prisoners. That was just like endless, constant. And I was just like, okay, all right, I get it. They're torturing these guys by doing this Russian roulette thing. Some are gonna die, some are not. Let's go.
Yeah. No, but like I said, they're Jared. If they used it once, or Stephen, but if they used it once, that long drawn out scene could have stood in its own feet. But because they revisit it multiple times afterwards, it's like, okay, this is a sport now, and I get that's sort of the point that they're making with it. But because it's a device rather than a truth bomb or something you're really saying at that stage, then it just the emotional impact and the damage was done in that first time without it being used again. Like the very last one, Nick's gone in terms of drugs and all that kind of stuff. It's nothing to do with Russian roulette at that stage. It's just about who he is as a person and his lack of realization of who he is as compared to who he was. So to me, the Russian roulette was not needed. It was almost as if they'd run out of ideas of how to represent that.
Yeah, it's I there's a lot of decisions they make that I get why, like the long wedding, the quick break from the hunting trip to the battlefield, the Russian roulette scene. They draw it out to try and build tension, to try to get try and engage the viewer to build that despair and that hopeless feeling. And I get it, but when you have so many drawn out scenes like that, you start to get less patient. And when you draw a scene out to build tension, it's more annoying than it is building anything, because you've sat through an hour and a half of this stuff, and now it's like, just please get on with it. Like, let's go. It's the quiet moments are used or a way to these quiet moments, these private moments, these they can be used in a certain way, but everything is so drawn out that it just, by that point, it's just like, please just hurry up. Like, let's move this along. And we really don't spend a lot of time in Vietnam. I think one of you mentioned it's really not a Vietnam film. Like, it is, but it's really not about the battle there. It's more about the lasting impact after, and whether it changes people. But there wasn't a whole lot there in Vietnam. It's over pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a shred of hope that I was going to like the film better when Mike returned. When we see him returning, and we see him, he sees like all the welcome party stuff set up, and he tells the driver to keep going. And I was like, okay, this is this is gonna be something. This is gonna, Mike doesn't want to deal with people celebrating his return from something that was very horrific to him. I totally got that. I was just like, yep, that makes complete sense. And there was there was a line he said about, I don't know what I feel, when somebody asked him, how you feeling. He's like, I don't know what I feel. And I was like, I thought that summed it up very well. It's hard to know how you're feeling. It's hard to deal with all that stuff. So I thought that summed that up pretty good. And so I thought we were going to be going somewhere, with this place, with this exploration of this guy not knowing how to feel when he gets back there. And they do it a little bit, but once again, it gets drawn out. It's so long. And I was just like, okay, we got to the scene where he couldn't shoot the buck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's good.
Yep.
But why did it take us 30 minutes to get there?
Yeah. Well, there was that whole melodrama piece that was sort of between him and Linda.
Mm-hmm.
He, they couldn't sort of meet in the middle anymore. From where they were. But again, one of those scenes would have done it. The scene where he fell asleep in the room, and she lay her head down, it would have done. But again, they went back to the well again and showed the impact of that again on her. Not needed. And like you say, by the time we got to the buck shooting scene, which is a really pivotal kind of scene, and a lot about the message on there, and in fact, it's really where the movie should have ended in a lot of ways, just around that place. That impact is lost because we've been sort of waiting on it, and then it's sort of discarded because of what happens afterwards, because these men are all broken, whether they're dead or alive at the end. So it sort of doesn't matter whether Steve's alive, can come back to town with no legs, or whether Nick's ever going to come back at all. The sort of changed anyway. That to me, there was no emotional payoff or impact by the fact that he didn't come home, because he was already. You seen this breakdown in the hospital, and when he was questioned at it, you seen who he was at that stage, and it's very sad for sure. But that was the emotionally impacting scene there, and not at the end.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chris. I really think you're right. It should have stopped there, because when Mike goes to see Steven, and then when he goes back to Vietnam, I literally wrote WTF in my notebook here, because we knew what was going to happen. We knew exactly what was going to happen, and then it happened just like we thought it was going to happen. And then there was this funeral for Nikki, and it was like blah blah blah. And you're right, the movie should have ended way before all that stuff. It would have been more impactful.
And I had to look up the first deer scene, because the scene of it being shot looked real. I thought they really shot a deer, but they tranquilized it. So it is a deer being tranquilized. It was not a deer being shot. But that was a well done scene. Yeah. It is hard to watch. So that is, I guess that falls under the positives. But
and I think it was you said this earlier on, Chad. Everything's just so on the nose from a point of view. Like even the ending song of "God Bless America," it's almost. It's too much, I mean, again, the point is made through the actions of the film without it having the end there, and I think they probably thought that was needed to give it some sort of closure. Maybe harken back to the musicals of the '60s. We need a good banger here to finish this off. Long movies, in Oscar tradition, but it was a bit too on the nose.
I think what would have been, instead of going back and being, I get the emotional impact of Russian roulette. I get why he wanted to go back and do that again and again because of the damage that to him. I get all that, but I think having them come home and then having maybe him become like homeless or an alcoholic, and De Niro's character having to go help him off the street to help him in recovery, or help him, get some help, or get a place to live or something. The Russian roulette thing just was way overdone. It just did not have the impact again and again and again. It just, and like you said, I think Chris, you mentioned or Jared, I think both of you mentioned that it's just everything was telegraphed. There was a lot of things that, as soon as we go back and he's there doing a Russian roulette, we know what's going to happen. We know what the end's going to be. So, yeah, it's just a really long movie.
Yeah. And
Just a really long
I have to say, like, one of the other films that was nominated was Coming Home, which I haven't seen in many, many years either. And I want to revisit that because it sort of deals with the same issues, but in a slightly different way, of people that go away to war and come back and their families have moved on rather than the men have moved on. You know, it's kind of same idea. And I like Hal Ashby as a director and somebody that's a storyteller, you know, much more over the years. So it'd be interesting to go back and watch that one now and compare it very directly, because the two films are about essentially the same sort of events, but looking at slightly from different sides, you know.
And the end, you know, when I first watched the last scene, I felt like it was it was in a sarcastic kind of. I took it as in a negative way that they were singing the anthem, and they were like it was a. I didn't feel like it was a patriotic way. I felt like it was a kind of in a sarcastic, taking a jab kind of way. Yeah. But I think it's in that sense. I do think that the end does work because it can be viewed either way. After seeing what these people go through, and really, it's all for really nothing, because it was all pointless. I took it as thanks a lot, like, you know, kind of in a taking a dig. But you can also view it as we're patriotic. We went because we did the right thing and we fought the good fight, and we did this for love of our country and love of our communities. And so it can be. I think it could be interpreted either way.
Yeah, I think the end for me is more the second one, but again, I think it's tinged by the fact that they were not a community of people, you know, from American descent, so to speak, in some ways, because they were sort of immigrant in some ways. I sort of feel like it's the only thing that they can take comfort in at the end is the fact that it was for a greater good, because they have sort of lost everything that they had beforehand. Like, if you compare the noise and everything at the wedding to the end, and the fact that one person starts singing very quietly and they all join in, as if to sort of mimic the Can't Take My Eyes Off You earlier on in the film, and the kind of joyousness, but there's no joy anymore. And this is just sort of like a bonding experience where they're trying to make sense of what's left behind.
I think it's all junk.
Da, 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 da.
I'm shocked that this film is so popular. I mean, I did a lot of just like reading reviews, and
yeah.
It is just celebrated, and no shade on anyone who enjoys it or who thinks it's good. I mean, of course, we all like.
I was definitely
things.
One of those people. Yeah, I had a 4.5 star.
Yeah, I just don't see it. It's just, I think if it was 2 hours long, even 2.5 hours long, I think it'd be a much more effective film. Yeah. If they would have cut down a lot of the scenes, they would have shortened things. And that's not because I'm a TikTok watcher who can't focus for more than 30 seconds at a time. It's because I value my time, and this movie did not need to be 3.5 hours long. The Godfather has a really long run time, and that film is solid from start to finish. I have no complaints about the length. The Godfather 2, no complaints about the length. You can have a long movie and it be effective because you use your time wisely. But if you use your time and you waste our time, then I have a problem with that. It did not need to be 3.5 hours long.
Yeah, well said. I remember telling you last week, Steve, that it didn't have the also didn't have like the photographic weight behind it to warrant its length. Unlike Lawrence of Arabia was very long, but it was beautiful to look at. You know, so at least you had that during the boring parts.
Yeah. It also, it's so dour for 3 hours. There is no relief in it at all. There is no levity at any point. It is just, it keeps on digging its hole, and the hole just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point that you're really in the pit of sadness by the end of it. If there had been the 3 hours some sort of like humour, although they're not really humorous people, but if there had been something to kind of break it up, some of the good times or whatever, and that's where I just really feel like the wedding scene doesn't, because it doesn't really feel like even the viewer has a good time watching it. You know, it's not that thing. And I just, the bit that I find really funny about the Oscars about this is that Michael Cimino won Best Director for this, and the editor won Best Editor. Peter Zinner or something won Best Editor, and they're the two things that I think the film lacked, the two areas that lacked. The cinematography I can sort of get, because actually some of the hunting stuff, like those scenes are beautifully shot. That's very well done, like you even said, the thing, but they're very brief within the film. But the success of this film is actually what led to Michael Cimino's kind of, he couldn't break away from it, because his next film, Heaven's Gate, it's 5.5 hours long.
What?
Wow.
Yeah, and very famous, expensive flop by all accounts. I think it's 5.5 hours, something like that. And it's a very, very long, and his career never recovered from them. But if you were him, he got rewarded for having a film that he stretched and was slow and all of those things. So if you were him, you'd be going, I gotta do. This is what people come to my movies for. This is what I'm great at. Rather than literally won an Oscar for what I think was a very botched job in terms of what he should have looked at, what he filmed, and kind of what he put together.
Interesting. I did read some posts about this film that said the wedding scene, the 40 minutes, whatever minutes of the wedding scene is the most beautiful thing put on film.
Wow.
And I thought, what?
Did he not see the wedding scene at The Godfather?
I mean,
well, I was going to say, like, obviously, I think there's a wedding scene because of The Godfather. I think it's trying to mimic an awful lot of that. But again, the wedding scene of The Godfather does so much. I mean, they have the wedding scene and they cut to Don Corleone in the office, kind of secluded from it. I mean, they use the contrast of the wedding scene all the time so effectively in that. Whereas this one, I think, is, like you said, it's almost like a wall of stuff, whether it's noise or, you know, brutality towards women. It's all not great.
Yeah. I mean, we learned, so, like you said, Chris, we learned so much in the wedding scene in the Godfather, and the only thing we learned is how much like a bunch of dicks these guys are. It's like, you don't need 40 minutes to tell us that.
Yeah,
we get it.
Yeah. Well said.
And I honestly, I had not heard of. I actually never heard of any of the other films that were nominated, so I haven't seen them, haven't heard of them. So I don't know. I don't know what else I would have chosen for this year, because I have no clue about any of the other films.
Yeah, Coming Home, Heaven Can Wait, Midnight Express, and Unmarried Woman.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I can't champion another one of these films over this one, because I just have no knowledge.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
There's quite a I think Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake would have been that year. I bloody love that film. Bloody love it. It's got a great ending. Superman, I think, was out that year as well. And again, I think we talked about this last time when we were talking about if Star Wars had have won. I think you would have seen the Oscars nominations change over the kind of next bit, but yeah.
I do think it's interesting looking at the list for winners when we come to, starting with 1969 with the Midnight Cowboy. I think you start to really see it gives you a it kind of sets up what the 70s will bring us with the French Connection, The Godfather, The Sting, Godfather 2, even One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Rocky, Annie Hall, and then here with The Deer Hunter. I think it kind of sets it up for more of a personal, kind of boots on the ground in the streets, character-focused movies, or kind of more gritty, more of a grit to them. So, interesting.
But I also feel from watching this, you could see that kind of style and the the darkness of the 70s filmmaking, as serious as it was, it had sort of eaten itself by the time we got to Deer Hunter. It was like it's like the joke they keep on making about the Batman movies is like every time they reboot it, it's got to be darker and grittier than the previous one that came before it. And I feel like the Deer Hunter was sort of going for that. Oh, Godfather Part 2 were gritty. Everything was sort of gritty around that time. We're going to make the grittiest, darkest thing they had. And by the time you get to a certain point, it's like, this is way over the top.
Yeah, we had a quick break with Annie Hall, but we had to get back to the
Indeed,
top.
yeah. Indeed.
Yeah. And then now we go on to Kramer versus Kramer, which I've never seen. But
I haven't seen it either, actually, funny enough.
I've only seen clips, I haven't seen the whole thing.
I have seen a couple of the other movies that were nominated that year, though, so that's like All That Jazz is brilliant. Love All That Jazz.
Well, speaking of The Sting, raise a glass to Robert Redford.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I've got a water bottle. It doesn't seem very apt, but to take your point, I'll hold up my bottle of gin, though. There we go. Or rum, as it is actually rather than gin. But yes, rest in peace.
So I guess the next topic is, where does this fit on your list from the films we've watched for the Oscars project? I think this is going to go my bottom 5.
Bottom 3.
Ooh. So that bottom 3 says it's third from bottom to me, right? So I'm going to take a guess that you're going to put Tom Jones and
Oliver.
Yeah, but not. It's a tough. They're fighting it out.
I don't know where it is for me. It's definitely not as. It's no Oliver. Like Oliver's a long way bottom for me, actually, even compared to Tom Jones. It's like, it was torturous.
Thinking back, so let's say I think the films that are on the bottom of all of our lists: Tom Jones, Oliver, Patton.
Yes, didn't like Patton.
So
it's better than all 3 of those for me.
So would you rather sit down and watch Patton or this?
Definitely this. It's not even.
I would watch Patton before this again.
Dear God.
Because this one hurt me too much. That's why.
Oh.
I think this is a better film. It's made better than Oliver, and made possibly Patton too. But this one just hurt me a lot.
I might want to watch this over A Man for All Seasons as well.
Yeah. I might even watch this before I watch Lawrence of Arabia.
That also could be true.
This?
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Maybe it's close. It would be this or Lawrence of Arabia, and then I go, do you know what? Just go outside, Chris. It's fine. You can go outside. It's no problem. You can do other things.
Yeah.
Ironically, if I was any good at running, I could run a marathon in the same time it would take to watch Lawrence of Arabia.
And there's a lot. I mean, I think Jared, you mentioned there's not a lot of quiet moments. There's always someone talking. I think Lawrence of Arabia is the opposite. There's so much quiet time, and there's so much scenery. And while it makes it easier to watch because it's visually appealing, it's so long.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I don't know. It's tough. I think bottom 7, which really is like middle of the pack. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
Not too bad.
Yeah. But we have one film of the 70s left, and then we're into the 80s, and I am worried.
Getting ready to fill more of those bottom slots.
Yeah, indeed. I might have Deer Hunter as one of the greatest films of all time by the time I hit the end of the 80s.
There's some stinkers.
We'll see.
There's some good ones. No, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a lot of wrong choices given the other films that were out at that time in a lot of cases.
So,
but
Kramer versus Kramer's next.
yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Is that Dustin Hoffman?
Yes.
It is, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Yeah.
He was very good in The Midnight Cowboy. I love that.
And Meryl Streep's back as well, so yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting way to finish up the 70s and. So,
Cool.
well, any other thoughts on the Deer Hunter?
Nope, not at all.
Our whole podcast episode was about as long as the wedding scene was.
That's true. That's true. If ever there was a reason for people to go back and listen to other, there's a good use of your time, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
And again, we don't dislike long movies. Long movies are fine.
Nope.
Use your time wisely. With all that said, this is an interesting one. With all that said, until next time, Chris, where can people find you?
You can find me on various other podcasts, Speculative Speculations, other read-alongs like the SF Masterworks. You can find me on my YouTube channel on the Chronicle of Chris or on Chris Moen, or you can find me at PageTune.
And Jared.
You can find me at the Fancy Thinker YouTube channel, where you'll see Chris a lot. And you can also find me on...
Great thumbnails, by the way. All of you.
Yeah.
Kudos.
Good fun.
Yeah. And you can find me on PageToing, and you can find me on the Weekly Polls podcast if you like comics.
Yeah.
That's
And all those links are down below, so be sure and check those out, along with all of our other friends over on PageTuring. So until next time, we will be discussing Kramer versus Kramer, and we'll see everyone then. Until then, hope everyone has a fantastic day.